question that I wanted to address is from Jason. And Jason wanted to know if we could explain the differences between analog and digital audio reproduction and why they sound different and why we tend to associate analog reproduction with high-end audio reproduction. So I thought I'd first start out with simple discussion of waveforms. If we take a simple audio waveform, okay, and if we draw that waveform to look like this, a simple sine wave, okay, this axis being time, this axis being amplitude, okay, a sine wave is an infinitesimally varying signal, and that would be a single tone sine wave. That's an analog waveform. Now, what we do in an analog waveform is we get infinitesimally small changes in amplitude with time shifts as the time evolves in this direction. When we make a digital waveform out of that, we actually sample this waveform. Okay? We sample it in time. And those samples are associated with a voltage, and it's in a binary format, 10, 11, 00. And they're all different, all the different voltages. And that binary rate, that binary number, is defined by the number of digits and the resolution on that voltage. So just in short form, when you see 24,192, 24 being the number of bits that describe the voltage sample, 192 being the sampling rate, the rate in kilohertz that we sample at. And there's engineers refer to a theorem called the Nyquist Theorem. He was a Bell Labs engineer. And he says, if I sample at twice the highest frequency of the tone, I won't get distortion or errors in this sampling process. Now, all that's true, and all that is relevant to the analog to digital conversion. Where the issue becomes in music is that rarely do we have waveforms that are single tones. Typically, a musical instrument or voice is made up of multiple waveforms. And those waveforms are called complex waveforms. So a musical string or a musical horn will have a fundamental tone, say a C note, and multiple overtones. And what that yields is a final waveform that we call a complex waveform. Get this completely erased here. We call it a complex waveform. That looks something like this. Now, when we sample the waveform on those same frequency intervals, it's entirely possible that the sampling misses some of that content. And we say, okay, well, we're sampling at 192 kilohertz in digital cases, in some cases, okay? So that should be a fairly high sampling rate according to the Nyquist theorem. And we say the audio frequency range is 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. And if we take, say, a tone in the a waveform in the 10 kilohertz range, okay, and we sample at twice that, 20 kilohertz, 192 kilohertz should be an ample sampling rate. The hitch comes in is in the overtones to the 10 kilohertz. So the 10 kilohertz tone can have overtones up in the 12th harmonic, 10th to 12th harmonic range, which puts that in the 100 to 120 kilohertz range. Now twice that would put you in the 200 to 240 kilohertz sampling range. We're not there with the 192. So indeed, with the digital conversion, it is possible that we could lose some of the information associated with the music reproduction in primarily harmonics and overtone content. You've heard me refer to before the thing that is probably the most important in amplifier design as associated with music reproduction, to get an amplifier to what listeners will call musical sounding, is transient response. You'll hear me refer to that frequently. So if we take a simple tone, okay, but the pluck of a guitar string or the crash of a cymbal has a very, very high voltage demand over a very short period of time. And I'll color the area under that curve. We call that a transient. In order to reproduce that transient, some digital sampling rates may fall short of that. But an analog amplifier will reproduce those transients as long as it has sufficient power to develop the full peak that the transient demands of the amplifier. So the primary differences between analog and digital rely to a great extent on the sampling rates and the number of bits designed to represent the digital sample. Digital music is getting better and better. We're getting high-def streaming sources that are extremely good. We all use them. But when it comes to critical listening, human beings are analog by nature, meaning that the human ear responds to infinitesimally small variations in sound pressure or amplitude when it comes to listening. And because human beings are analog, the interface to the human being should be analog. And therefore, we believe that analog reproduction, when it comes to critical listening for music, is probably the most true-to-life method for reproducing musical content. Again, I implore you to write to us, call us, reach out to us with any questions you may have, topics you'd like us to address. You can reach me directly at roger@rogershighfidelity.com or info@rogershighfidelity.com. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to hearing your responses.